Hello and welcome to the Fraternal Outdoors podcast. Today I'm joined by my co-host Sean Pine, and we have special guest Craig Thompson on the line. Craig hosts a YouTube channel called Wild Blue Discovery, where he shares his outdoor adventures, mostly revolving around fly fishing. Thanks for joining us, Craig.
Thanks for having me, fellas. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot. So it's good to be with you guys.
I'm excited to talk to you. And before we get into it too much, I'd be remiss not to give a shout out and a thank you to John Sicker for connecting us. That was very nice of him to do so. Let's start out with why fly fishing? What got you into the sport, and how'd that progress for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Years ago, in 1990, I graduated from college in 92, and I went into, at that point, I went into full-time ministry with a campus ministry outfit, and they had a summer project in Yellowstone National Park, and I decided to sign up for that project, and I bought a fly rod at the great outfitter known as Kmart, and went and bought a cheap reel as well. I still have this fly rod. It was a Zebco fly rod, and I did check. They still make them. I certainly not a place that you would think to buy a fly rod, or a company you would think to buy a fly rod. That's like the old push button, go to the farm pond and catch a bluegill. But anyway, so I got this rod and reel, and knowing I was going to Yellowstone, and we had our training down in Jackson Hole, and I spent some time down there, and I would go out and practice the casting motion and do that. And then I was like as basic as you could be by the end of that summer. I had the fly rod, the reel, I had a fanny pack for my basics. I didn't even have a net. It was, in fact, I want to make a video one time of here at some point with that. I still have this Yellowstone fanny pack. I want to go back and make a video and just kind of show how simple fly fishing can be.
From here to there, where you started to where you are now.
You could take it from here to there, exactly. There's kind of a funny story that goes along with this too. But so I practiced, and then we went up into the park, and up in the park you can go and ask that. I think it's still this way at some of the different places they sell flies, and I think what I did is I just went, asked what to use, and then went down to the Firehole River, and lo and behold, it worked. I caught a trout on a fly rod. So
that's awesome.
That began the love, if you would. And it was interesting. Later that summer, I went down to Colorado for a conference with the same ministry group, and my grandfather at that time was still living in Durango, Colorado. So I went down to see him, and it's funny. Like I said, I had no net. I had a fanny pack, and I was smart enough to ask at fly shops what to use. And I think I went down to a local shop there in Durango, and I think they may have told me to buy a hare's ear. I can't remember for sure, but the funny story is I go out on this rock and I'm fly fishing, and I land this big brown. And I'm a catch and release mainly guy now. I rarely ever keep a fish, but my grandfather was into catching and cooking. So I put this big brown trout on a stringer, and come walking up are these two guys, and they look like they came out of an Orvis magazine. They have all this stuff. They look like I would today. And they're like, "Did you catch that on a dry fly, wet fly?" And they're using this terminology that I have no clue. I'm like,
it's like, I caught it on this one.
I had a trout, and it hit a fly. I had no idea what it was. So it just, they had hit it bit whatever I threw out there. So, but anyway,
cool.
that started it, and
absolutely.
I went away from it I didn't do it for many years, and then after moving back to Pennsylvania, in about 2008, I had done a lot of work building a financial business, and I needed to have some time of getting into doing back. I think I tried it, and then it was like, I don't care if I have to go on Sunday morning. I got to get back, get up early and go. I got to get back into this type thing, and I restarted that in about 2008. Got my older son into it, and from then I just never looked back. And that was the rebirth, if you would, and that was it. And so it's been going strong ever since.
got you back outside. You got bit back in, and been rolling ever since outdoors. Yeah, that's can relate. I pulled Eli in on this. Was it now 3 years? We determined last time we talked. 3 years I pulled him into duck hunting just on a whim, and now here we are. Several years, several learning experiences later, and that's my passion. I pulled him into that.
But that's kind of what this podcast is about. Is we really love the outdoors and all the different facets, and I actually love hearing everybody's story on what clicks for them, what that one thing is that really ticks the box, that it gives you that drive to get outside, get outdoors, and experience nature. What sparked the interest to start documenting it with film?
I'm sure I'd watched a lot of YouTube, and in 2018 I just decided I'm going to do this. And I said I'm sure I'd watched plenty of YouTube, and there's something inside. I mean, I'm not the best at it. I mean, I'm 50 some years old. I'm an owner of a business. I'm a married man. I have kids. I have plenty on my plate. But there was just something there that my interest was sparked, and so I started doing it. And it's like anything else. You're not good when you start. It's bad. That's not the greatest in the world, and I'm still not the greatest in the world, but it's a lot better than what it was. And part of it is to having a lot of time to do it. But it just something sparked there, and I started it and got into doing it. And quite honestly, it's neat to document. It takes work. I mean, when I go watch somebody that's done a good YouTube video now, I mean, I see and I value the work. And I mean, just like today, we left Miracle Mile, and on the way out of there, I took time to get the drone in the air and to do some, filming that way. And I mean, it takes time. You don't just get good footage, from nothing. But there's something about the filming process that just it really interested me. And as I've gotten into it, it's also been something that for me, from the mental health perspective, it's kind of a therapy, if you would.
Sure.
If you ever put a puzzle together and you kind of get into it, you kind of know what I'm talking about. It's like you kind of get into this thing and you're putting it all together. And the filming's that way. You take the pieces and you start putting them together. But for me, it ends up being a mental health relaxation thing that I enjoy being in a stream, and I like the flowing water, and I like catching fish. But there's also just something about putting the video together that is a good, positive mental health relaxation thing for me. That's a good thing. And some people, I mean, it's tying flies. For me, I don't tie. I've never tied maybe that's my next thing, but I haven't done it yet.
What kind of camera equipment do you use when you're doing it? I watched your video for your Appalachia trip here, the one that you just posted not too long ago, and I was noticing all your truck shots and all your rig shots. It looks like you've got like a chest mount on some stuff, and then I don't know how you do it with the truck. I mean, you got a really nice setup. It's really cool to watch, even just like the traveling. I was watching it and I was taking notes, and I was like, man, you've got really good videos for this stuff. I was taking notes off of your stuff for like when we talk about doing it, recording some of our hunts and doing some of our trips. And man, I was having a blast last night watching that stuff, man. I was having a great time.
I appreciate that. I really do. I use a GoPro. I use a drone. And interesting thing, in that trip, I crashed my drone up on a mountain in West Virginia on the way home. I was trying to get a little bit of last-minute footage, and so that was an unfortunate thing. I did end up getting another drone, but it can be an expensive hobby. The nice thing about Christmas is I got a new one for Christmas. But anyway, but a drone, a GoPro. Quite honestly, what people don't realize is just a good cell phone. I mean, I guess a lot of people realize it now, but gosh, you can take a lot of great video just with a cell phone. And on that trip, I mean, that I also used the cell phones. I used the cell phone some on that trip, but the reality of it is, you can put some footage together just with a cell phone and a GoPro that's pretty darn good if you edit it well. I have now I have a drone, cell phone, the GoPro, and I recently, not too long ago, got a mirrorless camera, and that I'll have a series coming out on North Carolina. My son and I just went down and spent some time down in Western North Carolina in early June, and that will be the beginning of seeing the mirrorless coming into the picture, and that's really nice for doing slow motion shots. And it definitely doesn't throw everything out so wide like the GoPro does,
Right.
but it does. It's fun to put it together and look nice, and it's kind of like you build a project and you can kind of sit back, and certainly if I enjoy watching it, I hope then if I can put together something I like this, I enjoy it, then hopefully somebody else does too. So, but it does take work. But it's if the editing process you hate, then you'll probably never stick with it. I do not hate that process. It's by all means it can get a little bit tiresome at times, but there's something about putting it together that's enjoyable, or you just can't unless you hire an editor, you're not going to hang with it. So.
I really liked the stuff that I saw, your shots. You got an eye for putting the B-roll in the right places and taking the right shots. And I think that's something we've struggled as far as capturing hunts and different things we've done in the outdoors is if you don't turn the camera on, you definitely don't get the shot, right?
No.
And we're notorious for putting in a good day of just really fun activity, really nice outdoor experience, and then going, one of us probably should have turned the camera on. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, we should have recorded that. How many hours do you think of footage do you start with to make an hour-long video?
That West Virginia. That West Virginia trip was a little bit of a special trip, and it was one of those videos where if nobody watched it, it was okay, and if it did well, it was okay. It ended up doing pretty decent, but I would say that was probably not probably. That's the last camping trip my dad will make it. He's just not. It's the last one of I should say of the father of my guys get together type trips that I do annually. It's the last one he'll make. I don't see him in his health doing that anymore. If there could be a camping trip where we just get the campers and go somewhere that he possibly could do, but at this state I don't know that he will. So there was kind of a little bit of a special putting that together and as well. But that I don't know how many hours of stuff there was there. If you don't have a good computer, you got to have a good computer to move through it pretty quick, or it's going to really bog down. But it takes literally hours to put it together. Unless if you go out catch fish really pretty simple and easy, you mainly have GoPro footage. And that's pretty much all you do. You can, whip it out, maybe a 10-15 minute video, not too bad. But something like that Appalachia project, it took a lot of work, and also even planning the music that you put into it, that takes time. I ended up doing an article on that trip as well for, I don't know if you're familiar with Dark Skies Fly Fishing, Ralph Schrader up in Ritter County. He has he started a online magazine, and I did an article for that. But no, it's like I said, it just depends on like this trip that we're on right now. But my wife already joked around, I'm not going to see you when I get home because we're going to have hours and hours of footage. But this is not my full-time career, so it's, I have to keep that in mind. And I've also, with my financial business, I'm doing some YouTube stuff there as well. So I've got a lot of YouTube stuff going on. But anyway, but back to your question, you can have a lot or not so much if it's, if you go out for a half a day and you catch quite a few, fish or something, and it's not too bad. You can also, though, go out and plan to film and you don't have a good day.
Yeah, so, nothing's guaranteed, but it sure is fun
right.
either way. Yeah, I know I said it before, but I really enjoyed that. That was a really cool video to watch. I sat down, I wanted to look at some of your stuff and kind of get content, and man, I had, I don't know, a paragraph of notes on your videos and how you set them up, and I was really thrilled with it. They look really, really good. So I wanted to
go ahead.
at least
No, I appreciate that.
I just wanted to acknowledge it, that, you know, that you can tell there's a ton of effort that goes into it, and
it's very well
astonished.
put together.
Yeah.
And I really like how you tell the story of, you know, you have the whole trip. You're going out to the place. You're experiencing the full adventure. You know, it's not just fly. You know, it's not
Here's
just
the highlights
fly fishing.
and call it away.
It's the whole adventure. I feel like you touch on and capture that. You got a little bit of around camp, making dinner, kind of giving a little review of the day on what you couldn't capture on film. I think stuff like that really ties a video like that together.
Yeah, I think capturing. I like the idea of capturing the story of the day, and I think that's. I mean, there's certainly people that are far better at it than I am, but there's something to be said. You're exact. I mean, yeah, the fishing is, you know, the I guess you would say the stake of it, but there's, you know, capturing the element of the day is important, and sometimes there can be some surprises that you can capture. That, you know, that we were heading into fish a river in the national park, and all of a sudden you come upon elk, you know, and if you have the camera ready, you can, you know, which I did, and I was able to do some filming, and that'll be on, you know. So I mean, it's just stuff like that. If the camera is ready, but like you said, you got to turn it on, and you can grab those pieces. And it's like we were filming. My wife was helping me some film today, and got some antelope on film, and you know, it's cool stuff like that you can add into it. That I agree, it helps capture the fun element of the story of the day.
Yeah, it really rounds it out. I guess that would be a very good way of summarizing that. That was what I picked up on it heavily, and I was really excited about it. To shift gears a little bit back to the fishing aspect of stuff for your stuff, I've never fly fished a day in my life.
Oh wow! We should fix that problem.
I've never done it. I've only ever caught one trout in my whole life, and it was on an open face spinning reel up in the Adirondacks. We happened to be pulling over somewhere, and I had my fishing gear, and my parents they pulled off the side of the road. They wanted to do some looking at some maps and figure some stuff out, and meandered over to this little, I wouldn't even call it a stream. It was more like just a lazy section of a river, and tossed a spinner in and caught a trout, and I was super proud of myself. And
that's awesome.
I guess for a beginner like me, give me like a real short synopsis of how do you do what you do, how do you decide where to go, and just if you were going to talk to somebody like me with no experience, give me the intro.
Sure.
How do I do it?
Well, I think that nowadays it's so much easier than when I started. You know, there was no YouTube, and now you have. I don't know if you guys have heard of the app called Trout Routes. Have y'all heard of that at all?
Mm-mm.
I've heard of it. I haven't played with it at all.
Okay, you can get a free version. I buy the pro version. And there's also called on the water app, I believe. But the reality of it is, with those apps, all you got to do is download, say, the free Trout Routes app, and it's going to show you where trout streams are. So that's a great. It's a place like Pennsylvania. You're gonna have some stock stuff there that may not be worth a crap during the summer, but you know, you got to kind of consider that. But you know, in terms of knowing where to go, all you got to do is download that app, and then, you know, look around for streams in your general area. And then, you know, the truth of the matter is, you know, I mean, obviously I started out very simple. I had a fanny pack, some flies, and I'd say now it's still a good idea to have a net, but you know, you can start off very simple and buy very cheap equipment. You don't need expensive stuff. I only in the last while have, between the reel and a rod, between the two of those on my real high-end Euro setup, there's around $1,000 worth of equipment there. But trust me, for $100 you can buy a fantastic rod, and you know, less than $100 a good reel, and you know, get, say, a 9-foot 5 weight or something, and you know, you get your tippet and you add it to the line, and you know, get some few flies and just get the basics. The truth of the matter is, nowadays I carry a gazillion flies, but I don't end up using a lot of them. It's kind of stupid, because you end up, what you have confidence in, you use. But get confidence in a few flies, get a few basic things, get a net, I think at the end of the day, the wading boots are more important than the waders. The waders are always going to leak. You just need to get good at fixing them. You guys duck hunt, so you probably have waders already, but they're going to leak, right? I don't care if they're Sims. A buddy of mine bought the most expensive Sims I think he could get. Took them on a one trip, and they leaked from that one trip. I mean, Sims fixed them. Yeah. But my point is, they're going to leak.
All the money in the world, and it still ends up it's one little pinhole puts your whole day whole day wet feet.
Some basic waders, and I think if you're going to spend good money, I love the Sims flyweight boots, but the boots, good boots will make or break a day, and that's where I think it's good to spend some money. But the truth of the matter is, cheap reel, cheap rod, you get the basics, and you can go on YouTube and look at tutorial stuff, I'm sure, how to cast and that kind of thing, and you just get out and start doing it, and it doesn't take a lot of money, and quite honestly, you can probably even buy used equipment in places, and I've got more equipment than I even need at this point. But you do not have to. The truth of the matter is, $1,000 fly rod and $100 fly rod, the amount of fish that I catch in a day are not going to be much different between those two. So, I went out west with a cheap fly rod. I mean, I've only in the last while, it's not because I didn't have the money. I mean, only in the last while did I invest in the higher end. And we went out to Montana in 21. I think I caught 180 trout on cheap equipment. It doesn't. Yeah. Your drift. Your drift in the fly is way more important. How you're presenting that than the cost of your equipment. So,
learning the ins and outs, how much you spent on it.
Exactly. Not how much. What'd you say again?
Learning the tactic is a big part of it. I mean, it sounds like that's, like you said, you can start off with cheap stuff. You can start off with a learning basic, of a fly, and learning how to throw it and learning how to present it to the fish so that it looks real is
exactly.
Sounds like that's really the ticket.
That trumps. It's interesting. A big time Pennsylvania guy, Josh Miller, used to be on the USA fly fishing team, has a successful guiding business, and he was my mentor with Euro nymphing, and I actually paid for him to take me and my son out, and I'm friends with him to this day. But anyway, I knew him even before I paid him to take us out. But there was one point where he was early on in the competition game, and he had a beat where he did pretty good. And somebody was asking him what he did, and he said, they never asked what fly I used. I mean, the reality of it is presentation is very important. Let's face it, that trout will bite on a piece of corn. It'll bite. Yeah. I got another guide buddy that's literally taken a hook with a weight on it and caught a fish with no fly. So presentation is king. So, yeah.
They've got to eat. Fish got to eat no matter what.
They got to eat, exactly.
Think about all the wild food that we eat, man. There's a whole variety of stuff, and Animal Kingdom's really not that much different.
What's going to get you to grab it, isn't it?
In terms of presentation, I've heard the analogy, a conveyor belt of food. In fact, the guy might even said a conveyor belt of French fries. But anyway, if you think about a conveyor belt of food coming at you, then all of a sudden, let's say one of those French fries jumps off to the side or moves. It's like, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't look right. So you need to have that conveyor belt of food coming at that fish in a natural path, so.
Oh, yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
When you're going through a stream, you're kind of making your way along it, what kind of indicators speak to you as far as a spot that you think you want to float a fly or cast?
Well, it depends too on what style of fly fishing you're doing. If you're using a streamer, if you're wanting a streamer fish, certainly a big deep pool, that's nice for that. If you're wanting to do the Euro nymphing style, or your more ripply, rapidy type water is really nice. And when you're looking at that kind of water, the seams where fast and slow water meet, a lot of times a fish can be hanging there. So seams are very, very important. Even if you're dry fly fishing or whatever fishing you're doing, hitting the seam or where that fast and slow water meets is very, You could have a little eddy there off to the side. You've probably heard the term foam is home. I mean, if you see somewhere where foam's hanging, boy, there may be a fish there. And then every now and then there's going to be, you could be walking up the stream and spook a fish, to some place that, maybe in what you'd call B or C water that's not the A prime stuff. But by all means, you're looking, for places that, deep enough water that they can have cover. If it's extremely thin, okay, they're probably not there. It needs to have, but I've also heard Josh Miller talk about what's called nervous water, and it's just enough riffles. You take the Little Juniata River in Pennsylvania. If that water has just enough riffles that you get covered, there may be fish in there, and your average fisherman would walk right past that. So getting, understanding that and then realizing, okay, there could be fish in there, best not to just tromp right through that without fishing it first. But certainly, like if you're brook trout fishing, man, finding those nice little plunge poles to throw a dry fly in is, you're hoping it's money, and a decent chance it is, So the Adirondacks, really back cool. To that is, I've got some videos on that, and the Adirondacks are a beautiful area. That's a great area to go spend some time.
Yeah, I think we're pretty blessed in the Northeast with all the wild water we have around here.
Yeah, Pennsylvania's got more streams than any other state except Alaska, and granted, some of them are probably pretty teeny, but there's a lot of them.
Well, we've kayaked a good hunk of them. We've kayaked quite a few.
Yeah. On that note, what is your preference? Do you like to wade or walk in on the water, or do you prefer like a drift boat or a kayak?
Well, I don't own a drift boat. I'm not going to say I never will own one, but I don't at this point. But I enjoy both, to tell you the truth. The one thing, drift boating in certain situations is very nice. But even if you watch my last video, hooked up with a friend of mine, James Hill with Mountain Laurel Guide Service, and we did a day together. And we got out of the boat part of the time and we fished, and then part of the time we fished from the boat. And I think that's a great day to be able to do both of those. And in certain water, it looked like a really great day. It was. And my son kicked some tail. He kicked his old man's butt. Maybe you should have him on the podcast. But anyway, but I shot the video, so there's evidence that he kicked my tail. But anyway, I do like both. The one thing about floating, though, is you can move so fast over water that if you wait it, you could really pick it apart. So I like to do both, but there's definitely a reason to, like, you take the Miracle Mile we were just on. There was a lot of drift boats, and when water's moving pretty heavy, boy, there's no way you can cross. At least I would say on most places in that river, there's no way you were going to cross it. So having a drift boat where you could just be in the water certainly would have been nice. But that's a long answer. But I really like both. There's a purpose for both. We're heading them at the end of this trip. Before we start heading home, we'll wind up in Montana, and our friends out there, he has a drift boat, and our friend out there rather has a drift boat, and we'll be spending some time on that. So it's I guess you'd say the variety is fun. I like doing it both.
Yeah, fun to try it different ways, and each situation's got its own flavor. It's own little bit of the adventure.
Exactly.
You're currently traveling, doing some fishing, as you just alluded to. Can you tell us some more about that?
Yeah, we're on a 6-week. We have a pull behind RV camper, and we're on about a 6-week journey that we started. We're gonna almost cross America. We're starting in Pennsylvania, which, let's face it, that's pretty much East Coast. Philly, you're dang near not too far from the ocean. Obviously, we're in Western PA, but we're gonna go all the way to Boise, Idaho. We'll see if I tiptoe over into Oregon or not. I don't know that I'm gonna have time, but there is a river there I would like to go hit one morning, but I don't know what's gonna happen. But anyway. So we're going to go up to the Sawtooths. Well, from here we're going to go over. We're in Lander, Wyoming now. We started down in Cheyenne and spent some time on the front face of Colorado a little bit for a day, and then up to Miracle Mile. Now we're up at Lander. Kind of head over to Pinedale. So this is all the Wind River range. Tomorrow we should be up doing some fly fishing and hiking up in the Wind Rivers, which is just it's just an incredible range. Then we're going to do a little bit of time in Utah after we're done here, over to Boise, and then up into the Sawtooths. spend some time up in the Sawtooths and then up in the Montana and spend some time up there before we start heading home. And my two sons are going to join us we're going to be in the Bitterroot Valley, actually. Our friends purchased a home up there, and we're going to pop the camper there for some nights for about 10 days before we start meandering back home. So it's been, we went to Maine before in 22. That was a great trip, but this has definitely been the longest I've ever towed. So I did almost 600 miles one day towing, and I was pushing it. That's a lot of miles towing.
That looks like a pretty big camper too. That's quite the tow.
It's about 25 feet, and the last time I towed out west was with a pop-up, so it's definitely, you got to pay more attention by all means.
Yeah, there's a lot more trailer than a pop-up when you have 25 foot of tail.
Yeah, you got it. And you can get some serious wind out here. I mean, in fact, we were sitting here at the campground just earlier today, and the storm came out of the Wind River Range. I mean, it hit, and I mean, this thing was shaking. You got to respect the wind out here big time.
It gets funneled in those hills and in the mountains, and it comes right down, rushing and rolling.
Wyoming, and one time a guy told us, what do you think the W in Wyoming stands for? He may have been joking, but there's a lot of truth to it. It's a windy state. So you get to tow in that camper and you get a wind. I mean, you can literally be on flat ground and you're pressing the accelerator like you're going up a hill because just of the wind resistance. So
yeah,
the old Toyota Tundra likes to stop at gas stations.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, we get that quite a bit. I'm up in Syracuse, New York, but I do a lot of travel, both for work and for our adventures and our play. You know, Eli's down near Bradford, so crossing that hunk of the state, I know what you're talking about. Finding plenty of gas stations to pull things along, and we don't have anything. At least I don't have anything that's 25 feet long. It's quite that big. But looking at possibly maybe this coming year, adding some campers to our fleet to make our stays out in the woods a little better. But Eli's got a heck of a cool setup on his truck.
I've got a bit of an overlanding setup.
Nice.
I've got a Jeep Gladiator with a rack on the back and a rooftop tent. But I'm hoping this year to get a small pull behind, like a kind of like an overland style trailer that I can have a regular mattress, and then I'm eventually hoping to move the rooftop tent over to that. I have 2 young daughters. I'm hoping they'll sleep. They can climb the ladder, and I can have the enclosed room, but we'll see how it plays out. It'll probably be me in the tent by myself and all 3 girls in the cabin.
I like the overlanding. In fact, Blue Line Overland was originally my name, and
really?
I had to change it because somebody else had the name. And I really kind of overlanding and fly fishing, which you really just morph more into fly fishing. But you take this trip, we've done some overlanding, getting out to Miracle Mile, and I like Expedition Overland's YouTube channel. I follow that, watch a good bit of that.
Yes.
And
yep, that's it.
I do have some 33s on the Tundra now, and so we'll see what else happens. But I like that flavor stuff, so that's great. That's good stuff, man. That's very good.
Yeah, get to enjoy a little bit of the. Go ahead.
I also geek out over the Expedition Overland stuff. Every time they put out new content, I have to check it out. I really love. My Gladiator was a little bit inspired by the Gladiator they had for a little while.
Oh, there you go. That's cool. I mean, they definitely have inspired some folks. There's no doubt about it. They've done a very good job.
Yeah, I think they were the first people in the space to really take a cinematic approach to their YouTube content.
Clay there having filming background, they launched that from a different standpoint than somebody like me or you that had no filming background, and that really added a nice element. In fact, that one episode to this day is one of my favorite episodes, where they're down here around backcountry not too far from Yellowstone, and they're taking that trailer up that switchback. You may remember that, where they have to jack it up to move it to get that thing. They literally have to lift it up to get it. The road is so tight. I love that episode. Absolutely love that episode. But that type of adventure stuff is just really cool. So you kind of combine that with fly fishing, and you got me. You got me all. You got me. You got plenty of things that excite me. Yeah.
Well, and the fly fishing gives you a unique opportunity to take some of those back roads to get back in there where people aren't necessarily going as much to find the best waters, right?
Is that something that you find yourself doing? Is like you'll find a place to pull the camper to, and then you'll unhook the camper and take the truck? Do you explore kind of an overlanding approach to get to some of these spots that you get to? Fish?
The Tundra is only a 21. We got it in late 21, so not far from 22. So it's relatively new, but like we went up to Maine and camped at a campground up towards it's up there. I always butcher this name, but Mount Katahdin maybe. It's Baxter State Park. There's a Millinocket, I think it's the town, and we camped there. The campgrounds near there, but then I was able to take the Tundra out. They have what's called the Golden Road out to fish the west branch of the Penobscot River, and so yes, it can provide where you can have a base camp and then head out. And boy, I put a piece of rock right through the not that old a tire on that Tundra out there. That road up there, they call it the Golden Road, and it is horrible. I was hiking up in Baxter State Park like a day or two after that, and I meet these people. They're hiking, and the guy's like, when you come up here, they had a hunting camp up there, and he's like, he said you should bring 2 spare tires. He said they were heading into town. I think they had went through 2 spares already. Wow. And another tire went, and they had to keep airing it up to get back into town. The roads up there are especially they call it the Golden Road. I mean, it's a golden piece of crap, is what it is. I mean, it'll ruin a tire. But on this trip, going out the Miracle Mile was quite the adventure. I mean, you're about an hour tow from the nearest town, so it was generator, and we got Starlink for this trip, which I'm in business for myself, and so being in touch is. And I got to do some work too, so that was fantastic. But with Starlink, a generator in this camper, I mean, you can pretty much be in the middle of nowhere and have, be in good shape. But the road getting back there, you definitely, if I was going to do that a lot, I would want more of an overlanding setup. Coming back, there was a section of the road that the washboard part wasn't too bad going, but coming back that same spot, it rattled this camper like to no end. So there's no way I would do that a bunch without some sort of. You wouldn't want to do a lot of those types of roads, but anyway. So that's, but I certainly, to me, having a camper where you can go back a dirt road, pull off by a stream, and then base from there. Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. That's what it's all about, so to speak. Yeah.
I think you mentioned that was it Baxter State Park? I think my sister used to live in Colorado, and I think that she may have actually ended up going up there once. And I remember their trip. I believe it was like a F-150, but it was just a plain F-150. I think they ran into a tire thing, like you said, where I think they blew through their spare and ended up on on another one. But,
yeah, it's bad up there. I did a video called Maine's. On the thumbnail it says Maine's Montana. That Baxter, that's the coolest Rocky Mountain I have ever seen east of the Mississippi River. That is a neat place up there. Very neat.
That sounds really cool. Well, what else do we want to cover here on fly fishing stuff? I guess what's your upcoming excitement? I know we talked about your trip that you're on right now. What next trip? What are you planning? What's on the bucket list for things that you're like, I really want to plan a trip to do this adventure?
Oh boy! So we're gonna have the series coming out on Western North Carolina, and then we'll have the series on this. And this trip is definitely we guys should create a whole lot of content that may keep me backed up for a while.
It's a big haul.
What also is coming up after that is. We've got some great, wonderful South African friends that invite us to go on a cruise with them, and my wife and I'm actually going to first time fly fish saltwater without, say, just walking out to the surf and trying it in Florida. I didn't have any luck, but in the Caribbean of the Caribbeans of the Netherlands, whatever it's called, the ship's going to stop there. My wife's agreed to go with me. We're going to fly fish for some saltwater, so that's in January, and we're going to, part of January and into February. So I have never done that, and I really, we'll see what kind of almost addiction that creates, because you know, some of the stuff you can land on a fly rod in the saltwater just looks. I really want to catch a tarpon on a fly rod. I really do.
It's wild, wacky.
That would be amazing.
But
I think Meat Eater had a sub series on that where I think they did. I think it might have been part of the Das Boat series, or one of the people that they passed the boat off to. Just to give you a background on what the Das Boat thing was, do you know about it?
No,
at all?
I can't say I did. No.
So they buy what they would call the working man's boat, and then
Okay.
they pass it. Each group does a little bit of an upgrade, and they pass it on to the next group, and they get to do a little bit of an upgrade. So they start with this kind of ramshackle pile of parts, and by the end of the trip, it's this Franken boat of all these different people's specialties, all their different versions of fishing hobbies that they like to do. And I'm remembering one of them where they in a boat, and they put these kayak holders, because they were kayak fishing out in, I think it was like in the Everglades or somewhere down
I
there.
remember the episode
Salt
you're
marsh.
talking about.
And I think one of those guys ended up trying to do something with fly fishing, and it turned into quite an episode for their channel on how different it was, like you said, fly fishing in saltwater versus fly fishing on a stream or even in just a freshwater like a lake. Find out where that heads next.
I'm gonna have to get better at my standard casting type stuff for that trip. I have to do some practice. But is that on the YouTube channel or something you're talking about today?
Yeah, that would be a sub channel of the Meat Eater series. So if you were to go to the Meat Eater YouTube channel there and go to their playlists or their groups of videos, I believe it's under the DAS Boat series that they've got.
I could probably
in there.
send you a link.
Yeah, send me a link. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. If you like any of the Meat Eater content, you'll definitely like it, and it's fishing, so you'll probably get a kick out of it anyways. But yeah, I liked their Das Boat series as well. It is a fun twist on your typical fishing channel, because they're like Sean said, they're taking kind of a, you know, second hand is kind of a kind way to put it. You know, they're taking a boat that might be on its last legs and breathing some life into it and getting a last hurrah out of it, so to speak.
But seeing how they all cram their style into one boat, you know, it's a boat that essentially ends up with 5 purposes when it was really never intended for you in the first. And it definitely, it's entertainment. A lot of what we're talking about tonight with these other channels, Eli, when I go to his house to spend, you know, an evening or a weekend, and we end up out in his garage, and he's got a TV that's up in the corner, what we could generously call his first round of an office. We would sit there and watch, you know, all these different channels, and it was definitely helped shape where we ended up going with boat that he's been working on and building and doing kind of his own version of a Das Boat rehab on a boat that was definitely a little more of a whim. And then I'm currently in the middle of a process of taking what was a boat that was just gifted to me and turning it into my own custom creation. Definitely some of these other channels have kind of pulled our interests and our designs, and we're like, we're gonna do that, let's build one of those, let's try that fun little thing. And it's led into one heck of a Franken outdoor crew of different boats and vehicles.
It's a little bit of a problem when you have a farm upbringing and an engineering background, and then you love the outdoors. That all starts to meet somewhere, and it's usually some sort of a project.
I actually have a degree in mechanical engineering myself, even though I wound up in the financial business. So is that your background, Eli? Is it engineering?
Yeah, my background is mechanical engineering. Yeah.
Okay, nice.
And I'm an electrical engineer, so we all ended up.
All right, we're all engineers on this site tonight.
Nice.
I'm mindset.
I'm in the financial business now, but anyway, but back to your question. I'm hoping to also, my hopes would be there'll be a lot of Western United States content coming over the next few years. So eventually too, like to make it up to some of Banff, Canada, up in that area, and do some exploring up there too. There's a lot to explore, a lot to do, and you just got to keep the GoPro and the cameras handy if you're heading out, and you take them with you, you know, so.
Yeah, there's certainly no shortage of streams in the United States or Canada, North America in general, right?
No, absolutely. No need to go to another country in terms of you can't ever explore all the water we have in this great land, so.
Yeah, we're blessed that our country has such a wild and wonderful set of resources that were set aside, so that we can enjoy the outdoors across this country and really get to see very unique and very, I'll say, pristine sites. There's still quite a lot of the U.S. that's left wild and free to explore.
We're heading into, like I said, in Idaho, and I think it's 60-some% of Idaho is public land. That is just like fantastic. That's the way it should be. I don't know about you guys, but I get aggravated seeing no trespassing signs. It's like, I understand why people have to do it, but it's like, you find a stream and it's like, crap.
Yeah.
I was fishing a stock stream back. In fact, I was one once I did a video on. It's like there was so many no trespassing along this stock stream. It's like, goodness gracious. So we're blessed to have public land.
Yeah, you're trying to film a video, and every 100 feet is a no trespassing sign or a purple painted tree.
I've done that where I've ignored the trespassing sign, and it wasn't a good idea. So I don't do that anymore. The guy ended up being very nice to me, and we kind of it turned out very well. But I try to be more conscientious about that now. So
even though if you're in the water, it's you're in that gray area. Yeah, sometimes it's better to be polite and be conscious of the the ramifications outweigh the benefit.
We could do a whole different podcast on statute of navigable, right, for stream access.
Yeah.
How long did it take us when we were preparing to duck hunt early on when we didn't know where to go? We're sitting there in the boat with a rangefinder looking at the regulations on how close and how far do you have to be from another occupied dwelling. We're on a river where there's houses across the river, and we're set up, and how far do you really need to be 100% legal? And we're sitting there with a rangefinder finding their dock. Well, we need to move the boat 2 yards.
Well, we were like double what we needed to be where we actually set up, but it was one of those, well, we better make absolutely sure that we're in regs, because we were in an area that didn't get duck hunted a lot, and there was some really expensive houses on the water, and sometimes really folks that pay that kind of money for an expensive house really don't take kindly to people on the water that didn't pay to have that shoreline.
Yeah, I really don't want to find out I'm
hot
wrong.
Water there.
Don't want to find out I'm wrong by making an enemy of a lawyer who has a real nice beach house.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You don't need to help foot his bill or help pay his beach house bill.
No, not at all. But, sorry, Woody, I didn't want to cut you off, but that was I remember that very clearly, and I was even telling one of the other co-hosts we have, TJ, I was regurgitating to him every time we were looking at spots this past weekend. We were out 220 yards, 220 yards, 220 yards, and he's like, why do you keep saying that? That's the distance you got to be clear of structures. I can set up 2 feet from your dock, but if I'm shooting, I got to be 220 yards away from wherever I'm shooting in front of.
Well, it's like flying a drone. You got to be careful where you're flying.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I flew a drone up in New York, and then later found out if you flew it there, it had to have been launched from somewhere else than there to be legal. So I ended up having to take that footage out of my... Well, I ended up thinking there was a little bit left, but I mainly took it out, and it was great footage. But I found out later you couldn't legally take off from that spot.
Yeah, the FAA's gotten... You have to have... Do you have a pilot's license and stuff for a drone?
Not one as small as I got, no. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Because that's an emerging field where now, ever since the invent of consumer drones, they've had to change the regs quite a bit for flying drones and where you can and where you can't. In fact, there's a lot of places that you can't fly a drone.
No, exactly. And I had totally checked into this, but it was a really weird thing there. It was a gray area there. I did take off from that spot. The airspace, basically, I guess you could say, was okay if you flew in there from somewhere else. So, anyway,
the right direction or whatever.
Yeah, if you took off from the right area, I think it's the way it was. But in terms of actually
weird
flying,
red tape.
Yeah, in terms of actually taking off and flying there, you couldn't. I think maybe you could if you, like I said, if you flew in from another spot. But anyway, you were saying something there, Eli.
Yeah, Eli, sorry to cut you off.
I just wanted to touch on species for a little while and just get your take on. I'm presuming trout is kind of your main gig, but if you had more to say on that as far as what species you like catching the most, brookies versus rainbows or browns or.
Well, with Central PA right now being, you would call my home water, that, chasing browns ends up being what I do the most of. I certainly, if you see any, obviously that West Virginia trip, chasing some brook trout is a lot of fun as well too. I love cutthroat, the Western cutthroat trout. They're just a beautiful fish. If I had my, that's potentially my pick. Browns are very, it's really nice to catch a big brown as well too. And rainbows don't get much love, and they're beautiful too. But I'd say cutthroat that's definitely why I very much enjoy chasing as well. But out east it ends up being, out in
mostly
in Pennsylvania.
browns and brooks.
A lot of, when you're really chasing, what I fished a little Juniata a lot, and so it's browns. Certainly pins is nice too, and spring is as well. But I certainly love the cutthroat trout, and I don't know if I think the first one I caught on a fly rod was probably a rainbow in Yellowstone. But once cutthroat are just a unique, beautiful fish. I'd like to catch one of the golden trout up in the mountains that sometime as well. I've never caught one of those, but cutthroat are just. We were out in Yellowstone again in 21 actually, and the video I have that's Journey to the Bottom or whatever it was I called it. That day I lost one or two trout that didn't get on the hook, or I lost whichever it was. That you could potentially catch a cutthroat of a lifetime down there in the Yellowstone River. I mean, it's just. And they're just a gorgeous, beautiful fish. So, brown trout get a lot of love, and at the end of the day, they're an invasive species. But we still love them.
Sure.
they were not natural to the United States. So, but anyway, those are
still a fun catch.
They're still they're a great species to catch. They really are. You don't want to see them crowding out the brook trout, but I would love to catch some of those northeastern huge brook trout sometime. There's way up there in the Northeast. They have some big boys, and that would be pretty cool. A brook trout is just flat out gorgeous. Let's face it; it is just beautiful.
Yeah, where you find them and where they reside, it always ends up being pretty picturesque.
Yes. Yeah.
Holes, not only your surroundings are fun, but the fish are fun.
Do you think any one species inherently puts up more of a fight than any other one?
Gosh, depending on, I tell you what I caught 2 summers ago in 22 that I had a blast catching, and that's, you can find on that one of my main videos. But landlocked salmon, holy cow! It was the first time I had ever caught them, and those things just torpedo into the air when you hook them. Oh my gosh, oh, wow. I had an absolute blast that morning. I landed around 20 of them, and none of them were huge, but the fun of catching them was they're just like little acrobats, man. You hook them and they're just
very energetic fish.
Oh yeah. So those are a lot of fun. Honestly, those are a lot of fun. And rainbows tend to jump more than like browns do. But it's all fun. The truth of the matter is, pound for pound, a smallmouth bass on the fly rod is, I don't do much of it, but the truth of the matter is, when I got back into fly fishing, there was a creek that you could potentially in the spring catch a smallmouth. You might could catch a trout. You never. The reality of it is, either one could hit, and if that smallmouth hit, the fight. They are. I'll catch one here. I've caught some there on a little Juniata as well. But the reality of it is a smallmouth but they got that panfish body, and they can just really fight. So they're a great sport fish to pursue, but trout tends to be the, we tend to go over,
the target.
What a lot of us guys tend to target the most, but,
right.
Smallmouths to get more love than what they do.
Yeah, it's coming from my experience, that's usually what I'm fighting, is usually summer hit smallmouth and largemouth. a lot of my experience is lake fishing. They're fun. Sometimes they hit and they're just like a log. They lay right on the bottom, but ones that you're talking about, you're hitting them in the right water scenario where, yeah, they're pretty energetic and they rip and run pretty hard.
Yeah, you hit them in that right area in a stream where they're really feisty. I mean, they can take you on a nice fight.
Ever a scenario where you pull out conventional tackle, or are you fly guy all the way at this point?
That's a great question. You know, I actually took a spinning rod with me in the truck last night. I did not end up using it, but the Miracle Mile, which is the North Platte River, was really, I mean, they had it cranking 2600, and there's, to get way out into a pool, I mean, if you're just not going to do it unless, you know, you threw a spinning rod. I did not end up using it, but there's a video, if you look back through my videos, where my son is actually, he's the thumbnail in this huge brown trout, humongous brown trout. It was down in western North Carolina, and in that video I go back and forth between a fly rod and the spinning rods. So in fact, maybe on more than one video of that trip, but my good buddy Tom Kozlowski with White Robin Outdoors, he has a channel and Facebook page, but anyway, he's an ambassador for Freaky Franks, and he was along on that trip with me, and so anyway, I did some switching back and forth. I don't normally do it, but like you take up in a lake, you could easily take a fly and attach it to it and cast it, because a lake could be, if you got a wind blowing or something like that, it could be quite difficult to run a fly rod. So I think there's the bottom line is, as long as you're having fun, is what, you know, it's all that matters. So if it's a spinning rod or if it's a fly rod, or, you know, doesn't matter. Heck, going out
time and place.
Perch fishing on Lake Erie's a lot of fun. I mean, and that's good eating.
Yeah, we're no strangers to taking home some perch. We both ice fish when the weather allows.
Yep.
So
perch, we have some friends out in Rochester, New York, that they itched to ice fish. They ice fish every chance they get, and so when the weather allows, when the ice allows, they pull us out, and we end up sitting and we'll pull quite a few perch. And I think, Eli, you turned me on to the the skin on fish tacos.
Oh yeah, skin on all the way. That's where the flavor is.
That is quite an adventure. That's something I would have never done just by myself.
Scaling is a pain, but if you got the dedication to scale the fish, I prefer skin on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing wrong with eating some fish skin.
Going back to your point though, Craig, I guess it's ultimately between conventional and fly gear. It's whatever the situation calls for, and whatever you're feeling for that particular day and that particular set of circumstances. Is that a fair way to say it?
I was actually up your way last summer, and I did some traditional tackle. We spent some time camping in the Finger Lakes, and the one thing though with YouTube is, if you do a channel, you need to stay consistent in what you're putting on there. That you know, and so that's obviously my first love is fly fishing, so that's pretty easy. But not that you could jump around some with that, and maybe have some fine success with it, but definitely kind of sticking with a niche is important too, in terms of putting out the content. But in terms of just, I mean, I was like last summer we were up there, I was doing some fishing out of a kayak with a spinning rod, and heck yeah, and I'll still have fun. Absolutely. We got these, you may have heard of these, called Tuck Tech kayaks, where they roll up like a Tootsie Roll.
Yeah,
they're like they break down almost like flat.
Yeah, they break down flat and you roll them up, and we didn't bring them on this trip, but my wife and I, we each have one, and we had them up there in New York. But yeah, it's great because you don't have to take up all this space for kayaks, and you can take it with you. So give me a spinning rod and put me in the kayak, and I'll be happy.
Yeah, like you said, your channel, your focus is your fly fishing.
Right.
There ain't a day that would be bad day fishing. Pizza day work.
Exactly. It's better to be out doing that. You got it. I mean, if I go to the beach, give me a spinning rod, and I'll go walk out in the surf. And I was doing that last fall down in Florida, you know. So I'm not one to lay around on the beach long. I just put me out in the water.
Have it as something to enjoy.
Very cool. Well, we're getting around an hour here, so I think we can probably wrap. Where can people find you when they want to check out your content?
Sure. Well, obviously at Wild Blue Discovery on YouTube. is where you can watch the content, and then the other way is to see at Wild Blue Discovery on Instagram. So I'm on. Those are the two that I'm. As far, I don't have a website, anything like that yet. I'm not progressed to that, but they certainly can get in contact with me on YouTube and or Instagram. And appreciate you guys having me on, and maybe we can get together in the outdoors sometime, whether it be overlanding or I'm not opposed to you could duck hunting, I think, in the cold weather, right? So
if you start with geese, you can start in September and you can roll all the way through. Now they have a snow geese season runs all the way through April, so I mean it's you can go right from start of fall all the way to spring.
Something I've never done, but doesn't mean I couldn't be drug and convinced to try it. You know what I'm saying? So,
awesome.
But I certainly I haven't hunted. I've deer hunted. That's been a long time, but I've never have bird hunted besides just walking in the woods and trying to jump something. That's the most I've ever. I don't think I've ever went with a. Can't say I ever went with a dog, but anyway, I never have shot a bird.
Dog is going to be new to us this year.
Yeah, this will be the first year. We just bought. My wife and we just bought in January our first dog, and it's a duck dog puppy that we're having professionally trained. So this will be the first year where I don't have to be my own duck dog. I'm looking forward to we
usually draw straws, and Sean gets the short one because we rigged the straws.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird how there's always one straw that suddenly gets shorter the minute I pull it out.
But yeah, thanks for having me on the board there tonight, guys. And
yeah, absolutely.
We'll nice being with you guys. And you're up in Bradford and you're in Syracuse, so maybe one day in western PA we would be able to see each other, but sometime. But yeah,
that would be great.
Thanks to Mr. Sicker. But Sicker and I have been friends for many, many years, and done some. We established Manly Camp together, which he may have talked to you about. It was a men's weekend thing, and so yeah, him and I have shared a love for the outdoors together for many years. So, but nice being with you guys tonight. Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I encourage everybody to check out Craig's content, and thanks for tuning into the Fraternal Outdoors podcast.